Hey, I'm Dylan Moss, a senior product designer, and this is UX Pursuit.
Welcome to UX Pursuit, a podcast dedicated to the unique stories and journeys of UX practitioners, how they got where they are today, what hurdles they overcame, and what advice they have for those currently pursuing a thriving career in UX. I'm Tim Bridgham, your host, and my hope is that these conversations might help and inspire those who are currently in their own UX pursuit. Dylan has been a creative ever since he was a kid, making art at his kitchen table and building with Legos. He was even exploring the beginnings of digital design through Microsoft Paint. Now he is a thoughtful product designer working through the immensely complex and ever-expanding world of digital design. In our conversation, Dylan talks about his start in print media, how he grew skills working on a variety of projects while doing agency work, and how he is trying to think about and unpack how design and UX impact so much more than just the screens we use every day.
Got a natural radio voice. Awesome. Well, Dylan, thank you again so much for taking time today to chat, to share your story, your journey in UX. I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I guess let's start maybe at the beginning. Where do you think your sort of UX journey begins?
I think design has been a part of my life for a really long time, and I think UX specifically kind of came out of that within the last handful of years in my career.
Okay.
But I think I've been a creative person or interested in creative things like art and design and making things, figuring out how things work ever since I was a kid. Always drawing, super into Legos and just open-ended creative things. I have two distinct memories of being a kid and thinking maybe this is something unique that I have. I was both drawing related, art has always been a big part of my life, but I had a moment drawing this hockey mascot when I was at the kitchen table, and my sister walked by and stopped and was like, "Oh wow, that's really great." And I was just totally, copying this mascot, trying to redraw it, bootlegging. Okay. And, I was like, "Oh wow, maybe this is something special that, is unique that I can be into, or that maybe not everybody does this or has this." And then another one was drawing this cover of a Goosebumps book that my friend Luke in elementary school, he paid me $1 to draw this for him. It was the same thing, just copying it, bootlegging it, but being able to do the proportions and getting into the details was really fun and interesting. And I remember people watching me do it as if it was this thing that was special or cool. As I think back about my childhood, both of those things kind of pop into my mind where creativity was around. And then I also remember playing with Microsoft Paint on the family computer at a really young age. And the idea, I probably couldn't articulate it, but the idea that you could pair creativity, like drawing or creating something, with the precision and the efficiency of the computer. I remember zooming in and you could see the pixels and you could line up the pixels perfectly, which is this power that you don't have as just a freehand drawing, pencil and paper.
Right.
And, you could also change it to spray paint, but you're still drawing, but it's augmented by this other thing, it's just so cool. The power of technology and the power of a computer, but pairing it with your creative ideas.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then got older, got into skateboarding, snowboarding, that whole world, music. Every band has a brand essentially, getting into the t-shirts of bands and redrawing logos of skateboarding graphics or snowboarding ads and stuff like that.
And I assume you're getting paid again for this?
No.
Just the one kid who paid you for design work?
That was my first and only commission.
Oh, okay.
The rest of this is just me in my room as just this little, middle of nowhere, just discovering, I don't think I could articulate what design was, but it was the pairing of communication with typography and graphics and photography, illustration, color, composition, all these things were cool and interesting, but I could never tell you what they were. I didn't understand what graphic design was or design was. but there was like a power to it. If you could draw something, you could make something real, or if you had a computer, you could make a logo and then you could print that on a sticker, and all of a sudden you have like a brand. Like that's crazy. You make something seem real, and you can materialize it in something you can touch and like interact with. And then in high school, did more art classes, and then thankfully we had graphic design classes in high school that I got to take, and that was the first time that we had like assignments and like got into Photoshop and like learned some of the early Adobe products, and that was just so cool and opened my eyes, and then really just started to hone in on that idea that like maybe there's a way I could do creative things with computers and like make things. Like that's just endlessly interesting to me. Yeah. And then I ended up working at a screen printing shop in high school. So we made t-shirts and apparel, and really loved print, like doing print work. And like I think that was the first time that I saw design applied to like a business, and the idea that you could have a profession with creativity. Like you could make things for people using your creative abilities, and they're stoked on it, and it's a product, And then went to college, to art school, studied design and art, and just kind of kept on going from there.
Did you have like a career envisioned as you were kind of going through school, or like were you thinking I'm going to work at a print shop or like do more digital things, or what was your kind of mindset?
I mean, I grew up in Nebraska in the Midwest, and the extent of what I saw as possible was like mostly in the advertising agency world. Like when I was in school, there was mostly just ad agencies around that were doing design. There weren't a lot of companies that had designers in-house. So my understanding of design once I got into school and in college and started thinking about a career was like, I will be a designer at an agency. Like that's just basically all you can do. Like that's how it works.
Okay.
I was super interested in print and did like poster shows and stuff like that, and really loved that, and loved like the control of that. Loved the process of screen printing, like the layers on top of each other, all the rules, and like the system that you have to make work for the craft in order for it to be a great poster. It's more than just the design. Like the design can be great, but then there's a whole craft to making the poster good as well. So that was really exciting.
So then was that kind of your next step, getting into working at an ad agency after you finished school?
Yeah, so did some internships in school. Really loved like the variety of working in an agency, like doing print work, starting to do some digital work, doing like illustration, doing ads, doing some video work, doing some like really bad writing or like idea concepting. Just being part of the whole creative process was really cool. And then continued to work in agencies for probably, I don't know, like 5 to 7 years, and really enjoyed that. And then got to the point where I started gravitating more and more to digital projects, and would always be trying to get more and more of that, because that was kind of like the new area to me that was like really exciting and interesting. And so did more and more of that, and then eventually realized that I wanted to like focus exclusively on that and just like deep dive on that, and go in-house where I could spend just all my time doing that rather than being spread more broadly to a variety of projects. Okay,
so in your agency kind of career, it was beyond just sort of designing in a computer. It was encompassed more, is what you're saying?
Yeah, like I did packaging work, like for consumer products, beverages, food products.
Cool.
So I got to do like a ton of different types of projects, like print work, some video work, motion work, like, and all that's really fun. But I realized that I was most excited about digital specific UX work, web design, digital product design.
Okay.
And the more and more I realized I wanted to do that, the less I wanted to keep spreading myself across all these other types of projects. Like I just didn't really want to do print design anymore. Like I wanted to just go focus on UX work. So yeah, tried to find a way that I could go in-house somewhere that I could just do that.
Yeah. So at this point, are you calling yourself like a graphic designer, or what's your job title?
Creative was our last title at the agency I was at, because the focus of that studio was really about like the concept. Like we did a lot of advertising, branding. It was a multidisciplinary design studio, which was really exciting. Like we had industrial designers that made physical products like bottles, beverage bottles, and other packaged goods. And I learned a lot from like rubbing shoulders with those people, which was really fun. And we did a lot of like big brand print work. So working with like production designers that would make sure like these can go to print and print like 1 million of these and it's going to work properly, you know, and not get messed up. So yeah, I would throw ideas into the mix for lots of different things, which is why they changed our title to creative, because it was more than just graphic design. Like graphic design feels like a pretty limited title to me as far as like what you can affect, but I've always thought of myself as just a designer, I think, because it's a really broad term that sometimes ideas come out like in a purely like communicative headline, you know, like when you're thinking about designing a billboard, you have like, I don't know, 3 to 5 words that you can use because of the context that it's in. So you have to think differently. It's not purely like a graphic design exercise. It's just a creative exercise because of the context and because of what you're trying to communicate and what the people that are seeing it are going to be, how they're going to be experiencing it. So design has always just been like a broad creative problem solving thing that takes on many forms. Sometimes an illustration is like the right move. Sometimes a photograph is the right move.
Yeah, no, I was curious then if, you know, going from work in agency, and you said you kind of really wanted to shift and focus on more UX or more just like digital products, if kind of like what was the process to sort of, you know, did you have to market yourself or like advertise yourself as like a UX designer? Is that what you were kind of, were those the job titles you were going after? Or I wonder if like, if other folks who are trying to do this, if they feel like they need to, you know, get training or like hone specific skills or traits or maybe highlight them to kind of, it doesn't sound like a major shift, but it's like enough of a shift that I could imagine that there is some steps you need to do to kind of go from a, you know, agency creative to more of like a specific UX designer or product designer.
Yeah, it's a really interesting challenge. And I scratched my head for a long time trying to figure out what that was, because I feel like I knew that I could do this work because I had been doing that work. But within the agency world, like the projects I had worked on were like maybe less deep or less of at scale than like you might have exposure to when you're working in-house. And so I think the main thing I was trying to figure out is like, how do I represent myself and how do I explain my process and show what I did and showed like kind of the UX steps or like the UX thinking that was involved with this, and not just show the end product and say, ta-da, here's the final thing, but kind of walking the viewer through what that process was. Because I think at that point, there was a lot that I still had to learn. Obviously, like UX is such a huge and deep world. Like I don't think I'll ever be a master of any one bit of it, you know, like there's just so much to take in and it's always changing. But it was, the big question to me was like, how do I show this work? How do I present it in a way that will show that I've done my best to like make this a user-centered experience and like walk you through what that looked like behind the scenes kind of. And you know, my portfolio still had a lot of other work, which I think I didn't want that to be like the main show, like all this other print work and branding and advertising work, but that is also design thinking, you know, that's also creative problem solving. So I think it's valid to talk about and show and present, and it like informs the UX work that I do, but it's not necessarily relevant to what I would be doing day in and day out maybe as a UX designer. But UX is like such a new and continuing to change thing. It seems that like, I don't think there's any one path that anyone takes to get there. Mm-hmm. So seeing that history that you have in maybe adjacent or other pockets of things that you've done can be really cool to see how that informs like who you are as a UX designer, UX person now, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that was one of the questions that I was going to ask you, is just sort of, you know, if you do have more of a visual design background, or, you know, is that important to still showcase if you're trying to shift in to more of a UX design? But it sounds like it really is.
To me, I think it really is. Like, if you have like a UX thinking mind, and like you have some of those methodologies and processes and like down, like you understand that, and you have like a handle on visual aesthetics, I think you're unstoppable. I think that's like, you can do all the work leading up to it, and then you can make like an exciting and awesome finished product and really wow people. So, and I think maybe that dips more into like product design. I think product design and UX title, like those two titles versus each other, is like continuing to be confusing to me. Like, I've met UX designers that don't have like a visual background, and it's just not their jam. Like, they don't get into that at all. And that's just not been my story. Like, so I'm always confused, like, how did you find UX design not coming from that visual background? Because to me, it's always been, in my experience, it's always been like an extension of design that I was already doing, or like visual design, or just visual communication, visual problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to me, showing some of those other skills, I think, is compelling and meaningful.
Yeah. And you mentioned sort of that visual side of things, and then also sort of honing and growing more of like the UX methodologies. How did you sort of hone those skills for yourself?
I think reading a lot, like doing as much just like homework as I could outside of the design, like the day-to-day design work that I was doing, and then trying to kind of walk those steps out, like trying to build that into my own practice. Because at the time in the agency, like, how we got to the end product was pretty open. Like, the process involved was kind of up to that designer. And so I had that flexibility to try and start introducing things into my own workflow and my own kind of take on what I think we should do for this project. And so, yeah, just kind of clunked my way through it slowly. Like, it's not, it's not amazing right away. It takes time.
Were there, big inspirations or big kind of resources that you used a lot as you were kind of reading and doing homework?
I mean, IDEO to me is like the coolest, like the ultimate, like design thinking past just digital products, like just like solving problems, like really hairy, crazy things with design.
Mm-hmm.
And so IDEO is like, continues to be a huge inspiration to me. And then like a Nielsen Norman group really like lands the plane on a lot of really practical understandings of like how to pull something off, how to do a certain method, or like a workshop, or like a template you can apply to a problem in a way. And so to me, yeah, IDEO has like that big inspiration, like unwieldy kind of like things. Nielsen Norman gets more into like the specifics of like how to do something maybe within the flow of a project. And then, yeah, just like newsletters and other kind of UX writing online. Here, just doing, yeah, probably just read too much. I do a lot of, like, to try and keep up on stuff, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, those are definitely two huge names in the UX world, and I like the way you've sort of described them as the idea creators, or like the big hairy problems, and then a lot of like the really technical approaches to how do you actually do those things in like the Nielsen Norman group. So did you consider like schooling as you were trying to do this, like going again like a certificate or a boot camp or anything like that?
Yeah, I really was torn about how to go about that, because I felt like I was far enough along in my design career. I had enough broad experience that I had this confidence that like I could do this work if I just had the right opportunity to like show that I can do this work. And I felt like, I'm pretty far along in my career now. I mean, maybe that's not that long, but 5 or 6 or 7 years of doing this professionally. It wasn't really in the timetable for me to just like go back to a traditional schooling for like a user-centered design school. So I considered like, what would a boot camp look like? I started going to some like events at, I think it was General Assembly, like just to see like panel discussions and things like that, and meeting some other folks, and ultimately just kept on iterating on my portfolio to try and show that I could do this work with the work that I had already done, if that makes sense. Like just presenting it in a way that shows the thinking behind it and not just kind of the polished end product. And yeah, so I ended up not doing any specific extra programs or anything like that. But I think, that could make sense to augment on top of maybe a past schooling or past experiences you already have, if you're looking for that specific hands-on experience, or, more teaching and like real instruction about that stuff. But I was just reading tons and trying to just absorb as much as I could out there. There's so many great resources out in the world online and everything. So
yeah, it's one way, and not the right way for everybody. And so
right.
It's cool. You can sort of leverage some of those like lower commitment, like little weekend. It sounds like you went to like the weekend or like, meetup type things. Again, sort of forming around the community and just more resources. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, thankfully I was able to do some digital projects within my day-to-day work. And so it was kind of like I had that flexibility to try and start creating like the methods around what I thought I wanted to be arcing towards with UX. And then that's not the case for everybody. Like a lot of folks maybe are in print design exclusively and they want to take that jump. And so I think it's a lot harder then to get that digital experience within your day-to-day work that you would need to show in a portfolio for another job. So in an instance like that, I could see where a boot camp or some sort of certification would make a lot of sense, just to kind of, jump fully into that world and start running.
Are there other skills or traits that you think folks should kind of try to hone or sharpen when it comes to sort of getting into more digital design in more of this UX focus?
I think like, I don't know about many hard skills, but like curiosity. Like I think I'm just a really curious person, like curious in learning about people that are not like me. Like I spend all my time thinking about these digital things, and that's just not normal. Like that's not what the rest of the world is doing, So to be making things for people that just spend a few minutes online and then get on with their day, it's a different challenge, which is really fun. And it's like really exciting. And I think, like a collaborative mindset is another big one to me, because working with engineers, developers, like on technology is always like, it's always going to be challenging. Like there's always constraints, and so no matter what you think initially with your design work, like there's going to be hurdles to get there with technology. And so pivoting, iterating, like being wrong, that's good and normal and it's okay. And like kind of having conviction, but like having like a loose grip on it and being willing to change and being willing to take that feedback and like go a different direction with it. So that's all, I don't know, that's all really interesting to me and fun, that it's like just kind of unwieldy and all over the place a bit.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And it definitely, I think that obviously there's like learning the craft and like learning the tools needed, but I think, it's interesting. Those, more soft skills or the things that make you more rounded, that those are the things that you need to apply, because design isn't just you working by yourself all day long. There are other people that you have to interact with, and like you mentioned, constraints. So being able to be flexible and adaptable.
That's really what drew me to it ultimately. Like coming from the world of print design or visual design, like if you're designing a poster, that 18 by 24 inches of paper is all yours. No one can tell you anything about it other than you. Like, you have complete control. You know exactly where the edges are, you know, everything, how many colors you have to work with. And working with digital products, there's so many people involved. There's so many things to consider. SEO, what are the analytics? What's the content? What's the content strategy? What kind of image assets do we have to work with? Is there motion involved? Like, it is so much to wrap your head around. And the only way that I've been able to think about how you would ever succeed with that is to just like stay flexible. Like, you have to be collaborative. You have to look to your partners that know way more about SEO or way more about the development side of these things. Trust them, listen to what they have to say, present what you think is the ultimate vision for like what this thing could be or how it should serve a customer, and then work collaboratively to get there, you know. And that will take some pivoting, that will take some changing. And that was just really exciting to me, to like be a part of something bigger and messier than just like the one poster that I have total dominion over, you know, like opening up the picture to be a lot broader. And you know, I think you can make really big and interesting things when you have so many people involved. It can be really exciting.
When it comes to, you know, your career, you've had a good chunk of time in like an agency world, and you had a good chunk of time now in like in-house. And you mentioned sort of sometimes the scope, I think you said, wasn't as deep in like agency. What are the kind of other, maybe, you know, is it deeper in-house, and what are the other kind of things folks should know about what's the difference between working in-house and working at an agency, at least from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think with agency, there was a wide variety of projects, which was really interesting. Like, I got to cut my teeth on new things frequently, and it was always new challenges. And like, you're never quite like an expert at a problem because it was a brand new problem that just showed up, which is fun and interesting. And but ultimately you can only go so deep on it, because eventually you have to move on to another project or another client. And when you're in-house, you're focusing kind of solely on this one thing. And so you have the opportunity to iterate on one thing maybe over and over until you really nail it, and continue to get that feedback from customers, like real customers using it in real life today, yesterday, they're going to use it tomorrow, and you can learn from that. And with the agency, you know, we would give the best solution we had, and then give it to the client, and they would run with it, and we would kind of like say bye, like it's out in the world now, which is cool to see it out in the world, but you don't have that continued relationship, that continued opportunity to keep iterating on it and learning from it. And so, yeah, being inside the machine of a much bigger in-house project or product or service, you can zero in on specifics and learn from those and continue to optimize something, which is kind of like a different way of thinking, like more of like a long-term maintenance, or like maintaining something and optimizing it over time, rather than like creating something like a real great solution and then kind of never seeing it again. At least that's kind of the relationships with some of the projects I had. I wished that I could go deeper and continue a relationship with that project and evolve it over time.
Yeah. And so have you found that you've been able to do that in your current job in-house? Yeah.
More, you know, there's still so many projects always to be doing in-house. And so there is that chance to come back and revisit things after we've learned from it more, or, you know, after something changes, or there's a new constraint, or there's a new technology. And yeah, just kind of steeping in that world, you just learn it much more intimately, and you make new kind of connections with how something could be done or what might be valuable to try. And with an agency, it's sort of like you do some research and you move quickly, but then ultimately, like, you can't keep fiddling with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I find that satisfying, that I can kind of sit with things a lot longer.
Yeah. I think a lot of that definitely resonates just from my experience being in a consultancy in my career. That it is exciting when kind of new opportunities and new clients and new problem spaces you get to kind of dive into, and there's a lot of variety. But yeah, sometimes you just kind of you have a good rapport with the client and you want to keep going on that problem space, or you really want to dig in more, or you found more issues that you wish you had more time to kind of design and work on, but it just, doesn't always work out that you get to keep going on those projects. So,
Right.
so it definitely resonates with me. I'm curious, through everything we've talked about, are there other things or anything jumping out to top of mind that's like, oh, this is just important for someone to know if they're trying to break into a UX design or product design career, or transition into one from something like visual design or graphic design?
I mean, continuing on the topic of agency versus in-house, I don't think it has to be a versus. I should just say agency and in-house.
Yeah.
I think there's a ton of value if you can do both. Like, I think that being in the agency made me think in a certain way, made me like sharp in a way that I really appreciate, and like forced me to just jump to a lot of different things and solve lots of different types of projects or problems. And I think being in-house, like we were talking about, allows you to go deeper. But if that's all you've ever done, then I think there's also opportunity to be challenged in other ways that agencies can. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to do both, I think both are super valuable at some point in your career, like to really round you out.
Yeah. What's next in your UX journey, or what are you thinking about down the road? That could be the project you're currently working on, or 10 years down the road.
I think the further along I get, the more I realize that like soft skills and people skills are such a huge part of projects and like products. And so that's like a never ending kind of journey for me to continue to get better at presenting, to get better at leading ideas and leading workshops and helping kind of bring people along on a journey of discovery for like where we think something should go with a project or a product. And so UX and all this is just never ending. Like it's like there's always more to learn. Like I want to learn more development. I want to learn more about SEO. I want to understand and like be able to work with analytics better. Like it never ends, which is exciting. Like I think there's so many different pockets to get better at and to learn more at. And I've also been really loving like to work with junior designers and teammates, like to give direction on projects and to help kind of distribute work and like kind of wrangle effort is really fun and satisfying to me. And so I think that like the trajectory of like a principal designer is really interesting to me, to be staying in the work, but also influencing the team around me by being involved in the work day to day. So yeah, I just want to keep getting better, keep expanding and learning, just keep on learning, growing.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. If people wanted to, learn more about you or connect, how can they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn and reach out. I'd love to, chat about anything design related, or I love creative mornings. So if ever we get to the point of meeting in person with people again, I'll be at Creative Mornings. And
what's Creative Mornings?
Creative Mornings? Oh man, it's so good. It's a nationwide, it's like on Friday mornings once a month. I think there's like maybe 200 some cities around the world that do it. And there's just a creative speaker that speaks every month on different topics. There's like a nationwide topic, just a huge variety of topics, like maybe vulnerability or humility or just like courage or something. And then there'll be a person from the city that speaks. Okay. So it's cool because just a wide variety of people speak, and it's like really cross-disciplinary. It's not just design, it's like writers and just people in the creative world, artists. It's fun. It's really cool. It's kind of my jam. I
Awesome.
think if I can just like spew out some other random stuff, like if you're like getting into UX, I think maintaining like an understanding or like an engagement with the broader world is really important to me, in because UX like doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists within the greater world, whether that's like a business or the government or some kind of service.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a thing that's applied to another thing in a way, if that makes sense. And so to me, like understanding or continuing to engage and be a part of the world, the broader world, is really exciting and interesting. And then thinking about how does design fit into this, or how could design be applied to this problem in this unique space? And that's like always also open-ended and never-ending, like the ways that design can be inserted into new problem areas and impacting things that you might be passionate about that are outside of that, that aren't directly related to design. And so to me, pairing those two worlds of interest is like a really fun place to be. I don't know where that fits into anything, but that was something that's come up. And to me, that's what Creative Mornings is all about. Like, you know, one of the speakers was a woman that was starting a company for like a new funeral service. So no longer putting people in a casket, which is like really detrimental to the earth ultimately, but to have them decompose in a really natural way, and their remains are like soil, and that was like mind-blowing. Like, it's a totally new design solution to a human problem or a human thing that's been going on as long as we've been around, you know? And it just makes you think about the world, the broader world. And so, yeah, I like to engage when I can with like the world of creativity or the world of design, and not zero in too much onto like UX design, because I think you'll get, like, as you do it more and more, like you'll get the kind of the on the ground, like practical things of UX design, like worked out in time with enough practice. But to me, it's exciting and inspiring to stay engaged with like the broader design community or creative thinking, creative people of the world.
Yeah, it totally makes me think of...
Rambling here.
No, it totally makes me think of 99% Invisible.
Totally.
And if you just, you just think of like where design, where research, where creative thinking can help solve problems beyond just, I need to buy something on a website, or, check out, or, buy plane tickets or whatever. But you can, give people information on, how to cross the street if they're blind by including ramps and little bubbles, and like someone designed that, someone thought about that.
Absolutely.
And that goes, it makes UX like huge and mind blowing and really cool and exciting.
Totally.
To think about how you can apply, that perspective, like you said, just broader than maybe what you're just, one thing you're thinking about in UX.
Absolutely. Another thing that I was thinking about leading up to our conversation was one of the really impactful things that a professor told me in school was, like, as he got started, he runs an advertising agency, and he would just devour magazines and look at every ad, and he would try and reverse engineer by looking at that finished ad, like what was the creative brief for this ad? Like what was the client maybe wanting to communicate? What did the creative team maybe think would be a good way to solve that problem? How can he maybe imagine they ultimately got to that end solution? And I've done that throughout my life since hearing that from him. And I think you can apply that to anything, not just ads. You can apply that to a digital product. Like, why is this screen messaging me this thing with this one call to action button right here? Like, what are they trying to get me to do, whoever designed this, and why? And what if I had the opportunity to iterate on that? Like, would I do anything different? Would I add something, remove something? And I think you can just be designing in your mind and like sharpening your thinking, your creative thinking all the time, like looking at a curb cut, like with the 99% invisible thing, like, why is that curb cut here? Like, oh, somebody designed that for better access with wheelchairs, but that also benefits people pushing a stroller. That also benefits people who have limited mobility, like can't lift their leg up as high. Like, there's just design everywhere in the world, and it's fun to analyze it and think backwards on it. So yeah, I think there's always that to be done. And if you want to, push into this space, or you're new to that space, that's like a never-ending exercise to keep sharp and challenge yourself with.
Couldn't say it better myself. Cool, man. Well, yeah, thanks again for taking time to chat today. I really appreciate hearing your story and your advice and kind of your whole mindset. It's super cool and exciting to hear, that you're really digging into the little things, but also trying to maintain a huge, wide perspective. So that's awesome.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
A big thank you to Dylan for joining me on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation and appreciated his insight into the value of gaining experience in-house as well as in an agency. I'm so inspired by Dylan's passion to explore that very broad world of digital design, to learn from all those design pockets, and to think about how he can apply all that he's learned to his own design work and career. And if you're ever in need of a drawing of a Goosebumps book cover, you now know who to contact. Thank you so much for checking out the show. If you're thinking about or pursuing a career in UX or currently work in UX, I hope you find these discussions informative and helpful. You can find UX Pursuit wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now, and if you know others pursuing a career in UX, please tell them about the show. If this is the first episode you're hearing, please take some time to check out past episodes featuring other fantastic UX practitioners. You can learn more about them or me by heading over to uxpursuit.com. If you want to get in touch or have questions about pursuing a UX career, please email me at hello@uxpursuit.com. Thank you so much to Irene Barber, a fellow UX practitioner, for creating all the awesome music you hear on the podcast. Be sure to check out her music under the artist name Nearby on Spotify or at nearbymusic.bandcamp.com. The show will be back in 2 weeks with the panel discussion that will mark the end of Season 1. If you've enjoyed what you've heard on the first season, please consider sharing it with others you think might enjoy it as well. I really want as many people to hear all the great stories and advice from all the great guests. Finally, thank you so much for listening. I'm Tim Bridgham, a senior UX researcher, and this is UX Pursuit.
Dude, Don Norman, his videos are so good. He uses his hands so much. I want to actually make a video of just his hand gestures because I just love the way he talks and the way he is. He's the best.